this article, a 49-year crusade inside the movement to overturn Roe versus Wade. Roe versus Wade was a 49.5 years from the time it was officially put into law in the Constitution, and 49.5 years to the time when it was overturned, which was in June of 20. It was June 22, 20 or 23, one or the other. I think it was 22. So this was overturning Roe versus Wade was an endeavor from the Republican Party for 49 years. They were trying to get it overturned. And this article shows us exactly what happened. Beginning in the first paragraph, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell still remembers the shock he felt when Donald Trump won the 2016 election. He also recalls what happened next. The first thing that came to my mind was the Supreme Court, McConnell said in an interview this past week, remembering his reaction that night as he watched results from a basement office at the National Republicans Senatorial Committee. So the first thing that he thought was Supreme Court. Why was he thinking the Supreme Court? Roe versus Wade. That's what he was thinking immediately. He soon called Donald McGowan, campaign counsel to the president-elect, who was slated to become the top White House lawyer. A week later, Leonard Leo, the head of the Conservative Federalist Society and a McConnell ally, was sitting with the president-elect and his advisors in Trump Tower in New York with a list of 6 potential conservative nominees alphabetically typed into a piece of personalized stationery, according to people familiar with the meeting who spoke on the condition of anonymity to reveal internal discussions. So the one section is, I was saying you can see the entire cabinet there in Wikipedia. Okay, well, in this particular case, it wasn't the whole cabinet that was there. It was a group of people. And so once again, it was Leo and McConnell. And Leonard Leo, what he brought that list to Trump Tower. Okay, he brought that list of nominees for the Supreme Court. Or a list of 6 potential conservative nominees in alphabetically order typed into a piece of personalized stationery. Okay, so these are conservatives. As incoming chief of staff, Reince Priebus and Trump's daughter Ivanka came in and out of the room, Leo laid out a roadmap for Trump on the federal court system, potentially transforming the foundational understanding of rights in America. It was a moment anti-abortion activists has been working toward for decades. So this is what McConnell jumped on this. Donald Trump did not jump on the anti-abortion. It was McConnell that did it. The highest reaches of Republican power finally focused in unison on achieving the once implausible goal of revisiting the jurisprudence of the 1960s and 70s, including Roe versus Wade, the 1973 ruling that legalized abortion nationwide. So that's when this began. The movement began with McConnell. The leak of a draft Supreme Court opinion on abortion this past week showed that a majority of the court is now poised to do just that, with 3 of the 5 potential votes for overturning Roe coming from justices recommended by Leo, appointed by Trump, and confirmed under the leadership of McConnell. So this was over a year ago, and it was overturned in 2022. Okay, that's when, in June, when it was officially overturned. So this was overturning Roe versus Wade, coming from justices recommended by Leo. So Leo had the list of the justices, the Supreme Court justices, that were potentially to be elected, and Trump would appoint them, and McConnell would confirm them. Okay, so it's the job of the president to appoint the judges, but there's an internal thing, the saying that what goes on behind closed doors, where they are the ones that are responsible. Donald Trump cannot just select his own. They have to. The judges need to be confirmed by the leader of the Senate, or the leader or who's given that role to do that. And Leo is the orchestrator of it all, because he's the one with all the he pushes all the buttons. He's the guy able to get it all done. So that's what happened. Now, if we go to this section now, so all this is regarding the beginning of how the Republican parties wanted to overthrow Roe versus Wade. And so this talks about the 70s, the 60s, the 80s, goes into 2010. It's just a road to where they got to. Okay, here's 1980 and the different presidencies that were presidents that were elected in those times. So that's what this is. And then we gets into 2010 with Obama. And so we're going to go to Trump. Here's some more writings regarding all this. And the Trump era begins right here. So in the Trump era, the direction of the movement changed again when a New York businessman and television personality suddenly stormed his way into the 2016 Republican presidential nomination fight with a documented personal life that did not lend itself to evangelical support. Trump made overturning Roe and Wade a centerpiece of his campaign, at one point even suggesting that there needs to be some form of punishment for women to seek procedures before backtracking. So he used that after the process, not before. And it says it here. Okay. It says here, at lunch with more than a dozen others that year, the powerhouse law firm. So this is after Donald Trump is, they're talking about it. At lunch with more than a dozen others that year at the powerhouse law firm Jones Day, Trump said he wanted to make the Supreme Court a campaign priority. Okay, so it's not necessarily that he wants to overturn Roe versus Wade. Okay, he doesn't say it was because of Roe versus Wade, but he did make it a centerpiece of his campaign here. Okay, Trump said, but he also wanted to have the Supreme Court nominees on his side, obviously, because it's just like what's happening in Israel with Benjamin Netanyahu. When he got elected, he wants to be able to control the Supreme Court, right? So they can basically do whatever they want. They have the power, they have the control. They can actually consolidate government and make one government that way, because they have so much power. That's what Trump's eye was on, and so he figured, which way he can get it, because he doesn't know anything regarding how it works, and you'll see that shows here. He has no clue. So Trump said he wanted to make the Supreme Court a campaign priority, surprising some in the room, including Leo, a devout Catholic who regularly visits the Vatican. Leo told others it was easy to come up with a list of judges that would provide the Republican base because there were decades of conservative lawyers in the pipeline. Okay, so he said he would take a list of judges that would please the Republican base. Okay. The success of this movement has been the result of sharp and unwavering focus, growing public sentiment against overreach by judges, and consensus among conservative activists around a single principle that having judges who respect the limits on their power and who enforce the limits on the power of the rest of the government as set forth in the Constitution is the best way to preserve the dignity and worth of all people in the long run, Leo said. So what they decided once again was that Roe versus Wade is not a constitutional thing. It's not written in the Constitution. The Constitution doesn't support it, after all. Trump would benefit from the fact that when Scalia died unexpectedly in February 2016, McConnell immediately announced from a trip to the Virgin Islands that he would not replace him with Obama's nominee to the Supreme Court. So this movement began with Mitch McConnell. Trump would benefit even before he was elected. In February 2016, well, Donald Trump was elected in November of 2016. So McConnell was the one who is once again looking at this movement, because he wants to nominate Supreme Judges to do what? To overthrow Roe versus Wade. That's his number one priority, to do that. Donald Trump would use Roe versus Wade in order to get votes. I mean, that's the only reason why. But he actually changed his stance regarding that. Obama's announces from a trip to the Virgin Islands that he would not replace him with Obama's nominee to the Supreme Court. McConnell's critics called the move craven, and even some Republicans wondered if it could hold. Abortion rights leaders were furious. They broke because they knew that that's what McConnell was after. Abortion rights leaders were furious. They broke out. They broke all the rules and said, Hangstrom Miller, who testified against Justice Neil M. Gorsuch during his confirmation hearings, it just feels like they lied and cheated and stole those really important rules, and now we can rely on we can't rely on the justice system. Trump's first Supreme Court nomination was one of those included on the first list of 6 people that Leo had brought to Trump. So Leo brought all the nominations to Trump. Leo went out to the White House in 2017 with a second list of 5 proposed candidates that included Brett M. Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett, who was elected, who would become Trump's next 2 picks for the High Court, replacing the retired Kennedy and the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Leo, McCain, and McConnell became a team working to keep judicial nominations effort moving, even as other parts of Trump's term fell victim to internal fighting. The 3 men usually agreed when McGahn and Leo, among others, searching for a nominee, and McConnell quickly confirming them. McConnell credited Trump's advisors for the picks, and Trump himself for signing on them. So McConnell credited Trump's advisors for the picks, not Trump. Trump himself was for signing off of them because he's the president. That's his job. He has to do it. You have to keep the protocol. And once again, he's the one in the front row where he's the one who deals with the public. So he has to take the credit for it and say, well, okay, this is all the decisions is for me. They take the heat for all the decisions, but it's not them making all the decisions. Trump would frequently ask advisors if his administration was setting records for judicial nominees, and if judicial candidates were tough and looked the part. According to multiple people familiar with the conversations who spoke on the condition of the anonymity to reveal internal discussions, he never veered from the list of candidates suggested by Leo and others, they said. John Holmes and McConnell advisors said it was an internal campaign to keep the accolades rolling in so Trump would stay interested in the topic. So they had to keep Trump focused in all of it. They had to lead him like, you would lead a child, holding a hand. Part of McConnell's goal was to make sure that Trump was getting the accolades that he needed to keep on doing what he was doing, Holmes said. There was no shortage of effort to raise the profile of the judges issue, so Trump would continue to have interest in it. Every time I saw Trump privately, he said, Mitch McConnell, judges. The only thing he wants is judges. That's it. A spokesman did not respond to a request to interview Trump for this story. Leo found he had extensive access in the White House and that the judges' issue moved quickly compared to previous White Houses, he told others. After Gorsuch's information in 2017, Trump was delighted by the progress flying on Air Force One. Trump raved to McConnell and others about what a good nominee he had been, according to Rep. Garland Andy Barr, who told the story of the Ruthless podcast last week. So once again, it was Mitch McConnell that confirmed, or that made the movement after to confirm all this. And he went on for a good while with his monologue about how he was the greatest choice ever to the United States Supreme Court. And at some point, after about 10 minutes or so, the president took a breath, Barr recalled, when there was a pause in the action. Leader McConnell didn't miss a beat. He kind of leaned forward and said to Mr. President Trump, "When are you going to thank me for that?" Ironically, the two men who had played such a central role in reshaping the nation's judiciaries have not spoken since the end of 2020, after Trump turned on McConnell for not attempting to overturn the result of the election he lost. And that's Leo and McConnell. So it was Leo and McConnell who played the role in reshaping the nation's judiciary system. And it was also the Republican Party that moved the Roe versus Wade. And so Donald Trump just used it as a crutch to get the judges in. And he didn't even pick the ones, he just picked the ones that were on the list. He didn't know which ones to pick. Right? And so that's how it happened. The most devastating gut punch was when Justice Ginsburg, by the end of his presidency, in part because of the 2020 death of Ginsburg, Trump had named over 220 conservative judges to the federal bench. Abortion rights advocates were helpless to stop the transformation, which culminated in the confirmation of Barrett, who took the oath of office 8 days before Trump lost the election. Amy Barrett was introduced to Trump by McConnell and Leo. The most devastating gut punch was when Justice Ginsburg died, said Kristen Ford, the Vice President of Communications and Research of NARAI, a national abortion rights group. I remember bracing for how much worse things were going to get. So this is what happened regarding Roe versus Wade. The sudden shift in the makeup of the High Court opened the floodgates in state legislatures. At least 9 states passed abortion bans in 2019 that clearly violated Roe, which protects abortions up to the point of viability, around 22 to 24 weeks, each hoping their law would make it all the way up to the increasing conservative Supreme Court. So from there, now it's starting to take root, it's starting to move, but once again, there's still abortions happening. And there's a lot of abortions in the states, and all we got to do is go to a different state and they can have an abortion. So this is what happened, and once again, you see those other write-ups where Donald Trump was saying that he did not think it was a good idea to overturn Roe versus Wade because of votes. He wasn't a good idea to not allow abortions in the Republican states. That's what he said. And he said that, you know, he kind of, I guess you could say that he wasn't going to, he didn't want to do it even while the process was happening. That's not what, he didn't want Roe versus Wade to be instituted in the country, to be overturned. He wouldn't have done it. He just did it because it was a movement that the Republicans wanted to do. I believe that he kind of looked at it as not a good thing. It says it right in these articles that overturning Roe versus Wade and instituting that is not a good thing. So this is how Supreme Court justices are selected. The President nominates someone for a vacancy on the court, and the Senate votes to confirm the nominee, which is to establish the one that they want, which requires a simple majority. In this way, both executive and legislative branches of the federal government have a choice in the composition of the Supreme Court. Okay? So both the executive and legislative branches of the federal government have a voice in the composition of the Supreme Court. So it's not just the way people think it is, where the president votes him in because that's his agenda and that's what he wants and all that. Yes, that has something to do with it. However, it is what the cabinet wants because they can vote against it and say, like, if these people were, let's say these people were, let's say they were like Democrat judges, okay, they would have shot it down. There's no way they would have been. So they were for the Republicans here. For the Republican, what was the list of nominees that Leonard Leo presented to Mitch McConnell? Because Mitch McConnell had other ones that he wanted as well. One other one that was really good. But that was possibly before Amy Barrett. Amy Barrett came later, and then Mitch McConnell said, okay, well, you know, she's actually even better, maybe. You know, we'll have Amy Barrett involved in it. They elected the ones that they wanted in order to overthrow. The number one priority was Roe versus Wade. I believe that was not the priority of Donald Trump. Roe versus Wade, once again, was something that he was saying at the time in order to be popular, in order to get a vote as he was campaigning. It says here in the Trump era, he made it a centerpiece of his campaign. Okay? A centerpiece of his campaign doesn't mean that he necessarily wanted it. He just used it as a campaign to get votes. It's all about himself. And he's not doing this for Jesus Christ. He's not doing this for the Holy Spirit. He's doing that for himself. 100%. So Roe versus Wade was overturned as far as it being part of the Constitution once again, but definitely not overturned regarding whether or not people can still have abortions in America. So the wall did not completely fall. And it certainly wasn't a Jericho movement because everything was done. The wall completely fell. It certainly wasn't a Mordecai and Ruth and Ahasuerus movement there where Ahasuerus made a decree for Jews to defend themselves, which they did and had complete victory. Everything was completely gone. No. Roe versus Wade is not completely removed, and it will never be completely removed. America will always have that happening, but what it did do, certainly, it gave people, once again, as I mentioned before, it really helped the believers, you know, to have that faith regarding that movement. But once again, it's a lack of knowledge. It's also a false vision as well. God did not use Donald Trump as far as Donald Trump being a man of God, and he moved him with the, you know, God can move him. He moved him, you know, but not because he's a child of God. It wasn't a fellowship thing with God. Okay, God can control. It's just like he did Cyrus. Donald Trump is a Babylonian God worshiper, and he's rejected God. God is nothing to Donald Trump. Trump believes that he's only looking at it for his own belly. That's it. After his own self, votes, election, power, a seat in the New World Order, a great seat above all others. That's what he's looking for. The agenda is the same. The competition is real also to get that seat. And he's a player. That's all he is. He's not born again, and he does not deserve to be put up in a pedestal in the Christian arena, and he certainly does not deserve to be trusted with souls, and he should certainly not have a devout following. That's called idolatry with humanity. And John and Jesus and all the prophets, they said, little children, keep yourselves away from idols. And so he's become that idol for the church in part also, not just 100% idol, but also, you know, it could be 10%, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80% idol as well in the hearts of the people. They call him the man of God, the chosen of God, and Donald Trump is playing on that. And they also say that the shofar is the voice of God and the power of God. The shofar, you know, it's ludicrous. It's a spectrum disorder of the mixtures, the fragmentation. Men just want to be superstar celebrities, and they want to get paid, having a celebrity status, just want to be the self-centered elephant in the room. Great ones that are above everybody else, and they want to set themselves there and exalt themselves, and do this type of promotion of Donald Trump, and then the people are following, and the greater the following, the greater the fall. So that's exactly the reality. Okay, so this is just another quick overview regarding what happened regarding Roe versus Wade, the appointed Supreme judges. Here is a photo of when President Trump met with Leo and others in 2017. So there's quite a few members there, not all of them, of the cabinet. And these are the ones that make the decisions. Excuse me. So just one note here, what this is saying: in 2016, Leo worked with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to block President Barack Obama's replacement appointee. So it's always a war between them regarding Supreme judges, and because they're positioning themselves for power. Merrick Garland. Leo's nonprofit, the Judicial Crisis Network, reported that it spent more than $7 million to prevent Garland's confirmation after Donald Trump's election. The New York Times described, so after Donald Trump's election, the New York Times described Leo as playing a critical role in reshaping the judiciary through Trump's Supreme Court nominees. So, but once again, we see in the last article that the Supreme Court nominee was nominated. It was a list given to Trump. Trump never came up with the list. He just went with whatever was given him. And so the list that Trump had was given to him by Leo and McConnell. First contacting, then appealing Judge Neil Gorsuch, such potential nominating him to the vacancy created by Scalia's death. Leo's coordinated, CRC advisor coordinated a months-long media campaign in support of Gorsuch's nomination, including opinion essays, contributed 5,000 quotes to news stories, scheduling, appearances, and television, all. Okay, between 2014 and 2017, Leo affiliated, and these raised over $250 million from donors, including Charles Koch and all that. Okay, so God elected Trump. He did elect Trump, and God is using Trump like a Cyrus. It's perfect parallel. And unfortunately, Jonathan Cahn was saying that Trump is paralleling Josiah, which is absolute heresy. That is absolutely untrue, and I'm going to prove that in possibly the next video, maybe this one, depending on how long it's going to be. Donald Trump is a Babylonian God worshiper. And God elected Trump as he did Cyrus. Supreme Judges list was picked by Leo and McConnell and presented to President Trump. And President Trump chose them. The cabinet confirmed them, established them, the judges, voting them in power. The cabinet has the final say who is or who is not elected. So you see here in 2018, reported that Politico reported that Leo had personally lobbied for Brett Kavanaugh's nomination for the Supreme Court seat, vacated by Anthony Kennedy, raised upward of $15 million in support of his confirmation. And so it's a continual, it's not a continual process, but when the process requires it, then these are the ones that have the power to step in, excuse me, and make those changes happen. And so that's who it was running the entire thing, really. It was the Republican Party, it was Mitch McConnell, it was the resolve of the Republican Party to get the nominations that they wanted because their number one sole interest was to overturn Roe versus Wade. And it was not, they're more responsible than Donald Trump for the overturning of Roe versus Wade. It said Trump who paved way for Roe versus Wade reversal, which is not true. Okay, it was the Republican Party, it was Mitch McConnell and Leonard Leo who paved the way. They've been paving the way. They've been, once again, for 49 years. And they saw the opening. God showed them the opening, and they took the opening. And it was a movement of God. But once again, God was not working through Donald Trump. He's just commanding Donald Trump, just like he did with Cyrus. Okay, because there's no fellowship there between Donald Trump and Jesus Christ. So he says that he says that Republicans speak very inarticulately about abortion. What he says here, former President Donald Trump, who paved the way for the undoing of federal abortion rights protections, said that some Republicans speak very inarticulately regarding the issue and have pursued terrible state-level restrictions that could alienate much of the country, while avoiding taking specific positions himself. So that speaks volumes. So he's not avoiding specific positions himself. Trump said in an NBC interview that if he is reelected, he will try to broker compromises on how long into pregnancies abortion should be legal and whether those restrictions should be imposed on the federal or the state level. See, I would sit down with both sides. Here's the Reich. Here is the compromise. He would sit with the Republicans and the Democrats. That's the little horn. That's the two horns of the devil in one. And I'd negotiate something, and we will end up with peace on that issue for the first time in 52 years, he said. And it would be actually 53 years, not 50 years, since the movement, since people have been praying regarding Roe versus Wade. Not 50 years, it's been at least 53 years, because it was 1970 when the case was first brought to trial. In 2023 would be 53 years of prayer. So we're past 53 years of prayer now. So you can see how Donald Trump wants to negotiate with the devil. He wants to find a compromise. And so they can become a lot more popular once they gain the whole world, then, well, we can have it then. What a plan, right? Is Christianity, does he want to rule, does he want to win the world for Christianity? No, he doesn't. Absolutely not. Donald Trump is not he's a physical kingdom dominionist. He is leading the people astray. He wants the power and control. That's what he's looking for. God does not compromise with anyone. There is no compromising there available. That's why the country is in a very difficult situation. If you compromise and you allow it to happen, then the country becomes even more determined. It becomes even more, it's like feeding an addict the drugs and keep giving them the drug. Now abortion, like I said, the Bible says that people go from bad to worse. So the people, when they give that offering to the devil, which is what the New World Order does, that's what Donald Trump is doing, right? He's taken away that offering, and that's why they're so upset at him on a higher level of conquering the world, the very elite. So God does not compromise. Donald Trump wants to moderate it. He wants to keep, it's going to keep the abortion happening. It's actually going to lower the temperature regarding that between states. It's just an angle that he's using. I mean, that will never, never, never happen, because the wheat is growing with the tares. The wheat grows up in Christ, not violently, but in the grace of God. There's a separation between the sheep and the goats. And so you have the sheep that belong to Christ in that context, and then you have the goats that belongs to Lucifer. Well, what Donald Trump wants to do is he wants to compromise it. He wants them to come together and have peace. Peace, peace, they say, but there is no peace. Once again, it's from the devil. It's not from God. The Republicans are moving swiftly to eliminate it from the states. I mean, they want to get rid of it zero. They want to bring it down to nothing. That's what they want to do. And so the movement of God always wins. But we know what's going to happen in the end times. We know what's going to happen is that God is closing the age. And so he's looking for his first fruits. He's looking for the people that are going to stand up for him. He's looking for the soldiers. He's looking for those who are not going to compromise. Those who compromise are lukewarm. And not only that, but when you're compromising with abortion, you're actually an advocate for the devil. And God looks at them as his enemies. Because abortion is murder. It's a child sacrifice to the enemy, Lucifer, Satan, the devil. And it's detestable to God. It's an abomination to God. And all those who endorse it in any way, all those who enable it are just as guilty. God doesn't go halfway on anything. God is not compromising with the devil. So Donald Trump, once again, is the little horn administration. Whether he's the son, I don't think that he is the son of Satan. We are in desperate times. We're at the ends of the earth. Donald Trump is an antichrist. He is a lawless man of perdition on the very, very high scale of that. Like, he's tipping the scales right down right now. I mean, as far as prophecy goes, they're almost completely fulfilled. He's the one in Daniel that rises up with his countenance and is more stout than his fellows. And he is wearing out the saints. He's deceiving the saints, wearing them out. He's warring against the saints. He's invaded the sanctuary of God. He's polluting the sanctuary. He's causing the people to follow him and to be led completely astray. You make an agreement with the administration of Donald Trump. You're making an agreement with the devil. So in John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. Believing in God, once again, is doing in God, is doing it, is actually performing physically and spiritually. Believing when Jesus Christ lived, believing when he said to believe, he said believe with your physical body and your spiritual body. Believe with your life. And the only way that we can believe is when we surrender our souls, our physical body and our spiritual body, flesh and soul, to God, and ask him for help, ask him that we can believe properly, that he enables us to believe, as the one man said. He says, Lord, I believe, help thou my unbelief. Help me in my unbelief. I believe in you. Help me in my unbelieving in you. Because I'm not perfect. That's reality. We got to get into a spiritual, personal, and physical spiritual relationship with Jesus Christ, the one that rose from the dead.